Are you going to be homeless if your children don't pay the bills of the household? Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I am a licensed therapist. I've been counseling men and women who've been victims and perpetrators of abuse for many years now. I wanted to respond. I had made a post about parents who expect their children to pay them rent. This is a very common phenomenon. On the original post, there were a couple of people who said that if my child didn't, if I didn't take money from my child or if my child didn't pay bills, then we would be homeless. So it's either have the child chip in and pay the bills or be homeless. But I don't see those comments anymore. So I made that post yesterday and I went to go back and respond to them, but now they're no longer there. But this one is close enough, so I will respond to this commenter. She says, this was me from high to middle school, from middle school to high school. If I refused to pay my parents' rent, I knew we would be homeless again, which was a constant problem. I took into consideration my sister's needs, and how they needed stability as well. She goes on to talk about how she, later on became an exotic dancer, and, it was just this whole mess where she had to, basically pay her parents' bills. And I want to thank this commenter, and I want to, respond to other people who feel like, there are grown people out here who are parents that ought to be damn shamed of themselves that said, we'll be homeless if my kids don't pay my bills. I'm not kidding you when I think that people have that mentality. There is never ever a situation, and I'm sorry, I'm getting angry with this. There's never a situation where you ought to feel like you should take from your children or make your children feel responsible for taking care of the family as a parent. If you are a grown-ass mom or a grown-ass dad and you feel like your children ought to pay your bills, and some of the people are even talking about how their parents were on Section 8 and their parents were expecting them to pay them for rent more than what they were getting from Section 8 and government housing and all that kind of stuff. It's ridiculous. You are parentifying your children. You are abusing your children financially. You're abusing your child psychologically and emotionally to make them feel like they have to be the adult and they have to stabilize you as a grown parent that made the choice to lay down and have children. That is a choice that you made, being irresponsible. And so I say it's irresponsible for you to expect your children to pay your bills and, all that going on about, I'm going to be homeless and whatnot. Figure some things out. This is a situation where I would absolutely bite my hand off before I felt called to, say to my child, well, look, you're going to have to pay bills, John. I couldn't do it. And I wouldn't do it. And it's a situation where it's like, you have to be the adult. You have to be the leader in the family. And you're forcing your children to be put in a position to think about your welfare as a parent before allowing them to actually feel safe and have an experience as a child and, do what children do, which is play with dolls, play with robots or cars, go out and be a Boy Scout, Girl Scout, all those things. And instead of doing that, your child is sitting there stressing about how can I help mom or dad pay bills? How can I help another grown adult? How can I stabilize the family? Because if I don't do it, we're going to be SOL. Because I'm the only one that's responsible and I have to take on this and, I have to give up every aspect of myself to take care of everyone else. I also have to think about feeding my sisters and brothers and things like that. That is uncalled for and it's irresponsible. I'm not going to feel sorry for a parent that says, I would be homeless if my children didn't pay the bills. You're not going to get that here. And I do think that there's other ways in which you can problem solve and strategize before taking from your children and allowing your child to be a child. And I'm going to stand 10 toes down on that. I'm not going to argue back and forth in the comments, but that is something that I'm very passionate and very serious about. And if you were a client of mine and you expressed this sentiment to me, you would get the same sentiments. But I don't think any of my people that I've worked with would ever bring something like that to me. But I get it. And I get that things happen. So don't think I'm not sympathetic to things happening, especially in the climate that we're in. But I'm saying you have to do better and think better as a parent in order to and stop making your children responsible for things that you need to take ownership of. And yeah, that's not your child's responsibility, not ever. And so you really need to rethink some things. If you feel like sitting as a parent, if you feel so comfortable to say, yeah, I expect my child to pay my bills, and yeah, you got to really rethink some things. And that is not good parenting. And I'm here to call that out. And I'm sorry to this young lady who had to experience that. But you need to problem solve. You need to go to a shelter. You need to go to a workforce. You need to maybe call in other family members to help with assistance and things like that before you fix your mouth in your hands to start taking from your children, and not only taking from them, but expecting them to deliver that to you and expecting them to contribute and stabilize your home. Thank you so much.